Assalamu alaikum. Today's lesson is about the radical period of the French Revolution. It is chapter 6, lesson number 3. Uh, Objective of the lesson says that you must be able to understand how and why the radicals in France they abolished the monarchy. You must be able to explain why the Committee of Public Safety was created and why the Reign of Terror resulted. Then you must be able to summarize how the excesses of the convention led to the formation of the directory. Then the last objective of the lesson says that you must be able to analyze how the French people were affected by the changes brought about by the revolution. Some important names and terms: suffrage, for example, it says the right to vote. Robespierre was a leader of the Committee of Public Safety, and he was the chief designer, chief architect of the Reign of Terror. Uh, Reign of Terror was a period from September 1793 to July 1794. This was the period when those people who were against the French Revolution in France, they were either arrested or either executed. So one of the most important names that comes in the lesson is Napoleon. He was one of the popular military hero, and ultimately he became the leader of the France, ruler of the France, following the revolution. Marseille is a port city in France, and you must know that the French national anthem was named after it. Question number 1 says that uh, what events occurred during the radical phase of the French Revolution? Initially, first of all, during the radical phase of the revolution, monarchy was abolished and the republic was established, and the war with the European neighbors of France continued. Um, the radicals in France, they took control, and those who were against the revolution were subject to arrest and execution. Thousands of people, including the king and the queen, were beheaded. They were executed. In 1792, France was in very bad situation. The war with other countries was going badly. Um Inside France, people were suspecting that the king himself is in league with the foreign powers. Himself is actually helping the foreign powers to wage war against the France. So they suspected the king and the queen also. So citizens, as a result, they attacked the palace. King was held for a while, and ultimately king and his family escaped to the legislative assembly. Then citizens, they attacked the prisons where the nobles and the priests were held. Ultimately, so many attacks resulted in so many deaths and torture. This overall situation created a huge period of violence and tension. Then what happened as a result, that radicals, once they took control of the legislative body of France, they called for the new election and creating a new legislative body, which was named National Convention. National Convention, what did he do? National Convention actually took some radical steps. First of all, they extended the right to vote to all the male citizens. They seized the lands of the nobles. In addition, monarchy was abolished in the favor of republic. So that was one of the most important outcome of the new legislative body and its radical steps. Another important step that the National Convention took was to put the King Louis XVI on trial, and he was sentenced to death in January 1793. He was executed, and in the October of the same year, his wife Marie Antoinette was also executed by the same machine, which was a symbol of fear, the guillotine. That symbol of fear actually caused uproar not only in France but also all over the Europe, that a king has been beheaded. But anyhow, this was a lesson for those who were against the revolution. So revolution continued, and the leaders, they were very much adamant that the revolution should reach to its ultimate conclusion. So on the next step, 1793, France faced so many threats, external as well as internal. The war with the Netherlands, Spain, Britain, and Prussia continued. Royalists and priests, they were leading the rebellions against the government of that time. Reason because they wanted to bring the old order in power, the monarchy back into power. So they led the rebellions. The ordinary people of France, the sans-culottes, the working class, they demanded relief from the food shortages and inflation, high prices, unemployment, everything like this. So they demanded relief. The convention, the legislative body itself, was divided between the rivals, the Jacobins and the Girondins. One of the group was moderate and one of the group was radical. So when the government itself is divided, so just imagine that how it can perform its responsibilities. As a result, the convention finally created a committee of public safety, and the responsibility of the committee was to deal with all kinds of issues that the France was facing at that time. Committee of Public Safety was given full powers, absolute powers. The ideas of hopes, you remember if what we studied last quarter, that absolute power or the strong authority can bring peace and order in the society. So Committee of Public Safety was granted all these powers. French armies, they overran the Netherlands and they invaded Italy. So it resulted a sense of patriotism in the country. The public focus shifted from the local issues towards the bigger issue, that now the country is at war, we are winning the wars, we are winning the battles, so let's support our military. But inside the home, France battled strongly to those people who were against the revolution by using the Reign of Terror. The chief architect of the Reign of Terror was Maximilien Robespierre, and unfortunately he himself was the victim of that Reign of Terror when finally he was executed in 1794. But during this Reign of Terror, the leadership of the Committee of Public Safety actually uh, they brought some reforms. Although they supported the terror and to bring the peace and order in the society, but they promoted religious tolerance at the same time. They tried to abolish the slavery, and they arrested all the counter-revolutionaries or anti-revolutionaries. So this was their major target, to bring peace within France, which to a great extent they were successful, but ultimately the collective fear of the society resulted in consuming even those people who were the chief architects are the strongest power behind the Reign of Terror. So those people who were behind the Reign of Terror, they were also victim of it. Next slide says that in reaction to the Reign of Terror, then moderates, they produced a new constitution in 1795. The creation of the new constitution actually resulted in creating a five-man directory. This was a governing body, and its responsibility was to run the state. It was given the executive powers, and at the same time there was a bicameral or two-house legislature, the upper house and the lower house. Once the directory took over the power, they made peace with Prussia and Spain, but war with Austria and Britain continued. Another step that directory took was that they reconstituted the constitutional monarchy. This time the monarchy came back, but with very limited powers. Constitutional monarchy means the monarchy whose powers are defined in the constitution. The directory, but the directory was corrupt, and did not solve the problems. For example, inflation, rising prices of the bread. So ultimately, it was a failure, a failed experiment, which resulted in the arrival of Napoleon Bonaparte on the stage. He was a military hero. He was very smart, and he was the supporter of the revolution. Um in the start, he took over the power as the leader of the country, but once he consolidated his position as a ruler of the France, he put France on a path of building an empire in Europe. That's why within a short period of time, those nations who looked at France with a sense of hope, of liberty and equality and freedom, they looked France now as a source of ruthless power and an imperial country that is looking towards the resources and the territories of other nations. So this was a change in France. Napoleon's arrival in France make a huge shift in French society. By 1799, France had changed dramatically from the country of Louis XVI and his court to the country of liberties and fraternity and equality. The term citizen was applied to all the social classes. There were no more social classes, only one social class was there, and everyone was called citizen. Fashions, they gave way to a simple clothing. Nationalism rose throughout the France because of the Napoleon using a propaganda. Although some Napoleon had some failures in the battlefields, but he used the press to portray only his victories and to portray his positive side. And the news of failures were kept hidden from the general public. The military troops in Marseille, they marched to a rousing song that ultimately became the French national anthem. And the state schools, they replaced the religious schools. During the time of Louis XVI, church was controlling the education. They were running a huge setup of education. Schools were under their control. But now, religious schools were replaced by the state schools. Similarly, the social systems were organized to help the poor, the old soldiers, the veterans, and the war widows. So, by this way, France entered into a new era under the leadership of Napoleon. This is the end of the lesson. I hope you will understand the main concept. Still, if you believe that there is something that you need more clearance, you can put your question in the discussion board on the Schoology, and I hope that I will be able to answer it back as soon as possible. Thank you very much. See you soon again.